You have 5 minutes to hide a paperclip in your home. The detective has 24 hours to find it, and if they don't, you get $10,000. I'd probably put it in an opened jar of cider. A jar? A bottle of cider, then put the cap back on. Because you can do that. Although the detective, 24 hours, would probably notice that. If I put it inside my Xbox, but then that might break the Xbox. I'm not sure. Either way, look, I kind of got like a Mexico Breaking Bad piss filter on the camera right now. Not deliberately. That's just because of the time of day. What's this? Beautiful sunlight, rays of happiness, beam down upon me and provide me with vitality. Yes, indeed. For me to record 2 of these in a row, because that's what I'm doing. Kind of, maybe. At least 2 in one day. Maybe not in a row, I don't know. But I need to record these very, very in advance to save us from the possible impending 2 weeks, maybe even longer, of not being able to record. So I've got to get some stuff out of the way. I should probably hide my... I probably should be hiding the face cam. Oh my god. Oh wow, that is you know what, I don't care. That's not embarrassing. I think that's just funny. And you should too. I should probably hide the face cam just for a moment so you can see the whole thumbnail, the whole opening slide. But yeah, this is Overclock Workshop back to regularly scheduled programming with the proximity mine grenade, which is a pretty what shall we say? Cool grenade. There's definitely a point when I would have said it was my favorite. I might have even said it was the most powerful, which is still arguable. You've got 16 explosions in total, each dealing 110 damage, I believe. Extremely potent. Really weirdly good in hordes, like grunt hordes, and also dreadnought fights. Not the twins so much, but still. Either way. I hope the recent video went down well enough. I mean, it didn't get a huge amount of views. Whatever. Don't worry about it. But it really did explain literally every point that I could conceive of why there would and would not be grenade overclocks. So we are not going to go through the usual rigmarole of explaining. I'm simply just going to do the usual practice of proposing them either as things like new grenades or really just hammering in the hypothetical future. Hypothetical scenario where we get grenade overclocks. I'm going to be operating on different wavelengths for different overclocks, sometimes multiple wavelengths for the same overclock, and I hope that you find yourself able to simply ride the wave. I also remember these being some of my favourite ones I sort of created. So we have the clean, which was called escalation, where it's supposed to give you a slight increase to radius and damage with each successive blast, increasing radius by 0.5 meters and plus 10 damage. Now, not that the proximity mine needs any help, but if we have to stay within the bounds of reality, then this is the kind of thing that I could genuinely see being added to it. It's also, in my opinion, a interesting idea in general is escalating damage. The only example of this we have so far is feedback loop, and I'd like to see a little bit more of it. Sort of maybe combo damage is an interesting one. I believe that was a cut overclock for the Sabata, actually. Which was more damage to a single enemy the more consecutive hits you have on it. I'd love to see something like that. But I think if there was a grenade, it would be, honestly, it would be either the proximity mine or the plasma burster would both be very, very valid options to give this to. And I'd absolutely love to see that. It would be very fitting as a clean overclock or as a modification. But honestly, I don't even think it would be that insane to try and add it to the base proximity mine. Not ridiculous. In fact, you could actually do it sort of like an inverse. It could actually start out slightly weaker. It could start out 1 meter and 20 damage lower than it is currently, but end up 1 meter and 20 damage higher than it is currently as well. It could go in... Oh dear. Apologies. How unprofessional. But yeah, basically exponential damage and radius is I just realised that is exactly what feedback loop does. Feedback loop isn't just damage, it's both radius of the AoE effect and the AoE damage. So feedback loop should also, by the way, I want to have a lot of different changes that could be made to it, either lessen the ammo nerf or maybe have it so it increases direct damage over time as well. I don't know. I think you could do a lot more with it though. But either way, yeah. I think it is actually a really interesting mechanic that I'd love to see more of, and I think the proximity mine is a really interesting place that we could see it. Um, there's not really much more to it. I suppose you could be wondering if there's any kind of actual genuinely good argument for it. And I guess I would have to say not particularly, though. That's the thing. But I suppose that's why it fits so well in as a clean or even a base addition, because it's not actually that impactful, especially with the kind of numbers that we're talking here, mainly the damage. We're not really going to be changing any breakpoints with plus 10 damage per explosion, you know? Um, it could potentially kill some things faster. It might increase the overall breakpoints if you factor in all 4 explosions, or maybe all 3. Maybe 3 explosions can actually do in a guard. I don't know. I think it already can, actually. So yeah, it's a bit difficult to justify, really, but in my opinion, also difficult to refute. I hope you let me know. Either way, I'm going to put a pin in this because I can see that it doesn't have. It's not much I can really expand on it, but I think it is a worthy idea for consideration, for your consideration and Ghost Ships, and my own consideration as I manipulate the strings behind the scenes and make Deep Rock the game that I want it to be. That's what we're doing here. Okay, how about a balanced one? Radioactive buzz. The mines passively generate a sphere of radiation in the proximity, in the zone in which it detonates. With a reduced potential grenade lifetime and great reduced maximum damage radius. Obviously, sort of disregard the penalties. Although, if you're wondering what I meant by the second one, the proximity mines do expire after a set period of time, upon which they just explode. I don't really know how they explode. In my opinion, they should release all of their explosions at once. I think it's just a normal explosion, though. Just one. Either way, radiation. This is the kind of idea that could be its own grenade. I think that's fairly obvious. It's basically a radius of radiation. It's like Fat Boy Fallout, basically. Smaller, yes, but still basically that. In the form of a grenade that you can just sort of place down and it will just do that, I guess. Sounds simple, but it would be effective. It would be great against swarmers. That is something that's really the main point of this. Although a sphere, if you were to put it on a ceiling or wall, or maybe build out a platform of some kind, you could really use this to completely annihilate an infinite amount of tiny enemies. And I think that would be really cool. I would enjoy that a lot. Now, is this basically me asking for this as its own grenade? Yes, it is. I think that's the best way to approach this idea in general. The idea of a radioactive grenade. I think it's not and not I think. I know that is one of the ones that we sort of put forward in the grenade bingo way back when the season 3 roadmap was first revealed. We sort of ran through literally every grenade idea that I could think of, and a simple radiation grenade was in there. And I think that's actually the reason why I would love to see some more grenades, because I feel like there's a lot of simple stuff that they could do. And a pure radiation grenade would be one of them. Who would that go to, though? Well, yeah, I think Engineer is probably the best one. Straight up, I think it actually does fulfill a small niche. Having a not permanent, but a set, long-lasting aura of damage is niche enough to separate itself from proximity mines, especially because it would be more for small enemies anyway. But I did think the idea of putting it on the proximity mine could be interesting, where this is really a tiny enemy killer, except the fact, it's also going to go off when normal enemies walk on it, so there could even be strategy there, where you could use them to kill an infinite number of tiny enemies, which is why you'd probably have to make it so that you can't actually pick them up. That would have been the best penalty, really. So that would be a sufficient overclock. And I suppose a very strange thing that just struck my mind is how that would probably work very well as an overclock, like as in that would be balanced. This is kind of something I have been trying to do to a certain extent, making the case for grenade overclocks by showing good ideas, hopefully to Ghost Ship. I don't know if they actually watch these videos. But I think possibly as an unstable, where it does reduce your total lifetime of the grenade and also stops you from picking it up, that could justify the addition of a radioactive buzz. Could be very unreliable. It could just barely kill swarmers, which means it wouldn't kill shredders. It would obviously instantly kill NATO sites, so you can't really stop that from happening. It would also be decent crowd control in itself. It would slow enemies down. So that means mainly when it comes to things like grunts, where they would pretty much always be feared by it. They would actually, of course, they would be feared, but they would be slowed down, which means they'd have a harder time actually escaping. Which would just overall increase the effectiveness of the proximity mine in that case. So this is one that I both believe could actually sustain itself as its own grenade, but also is a really good piece of evidence for why grenade overclocks could be really cool. I think it serves both functions, and that's sort of my favorite kind. I think the next one is also pretty similar. In fact, the next one is similar also in function to this one. The name implies it much more heavily, though. The unstable that I originally created is called Fly Swatter, which gave me the opportunity to use the It's a Bug Thing perk icon for this, which I enjoyed quite a bit. Fly Swatter, massive increase to number of charges. Basically, just it's double. That's all it is. So it's 8 charges per mine. It also gives them the ability to detonate while mid throw, basically, as well as be picked up and rethrown as an object. Right, so sort of as a heavy object, basically. But it would be more like a grenade. It's right like a grenade, but with RT, I guess in this case. So reduce damage output, half the damage output, and it makes it so that they're set off by tiny and passive creatures. Oh, and passive creatures. That's interesting. I understand why. I know exactly why. Probably for festive fleas, and because of the It's a Bug thing. So I hope this immediately conveys why I said this could be a great overclock for it, as well as just its own grenade in general. Sort of a grenade that explodes in proximity of anything, but as you throw it, you can sort of throw it around, and while it's being thrown, it will explode. When it lands, you can pick it up, even if it's already exploded, but you have to throw it again. You can't throw a new one if you're going to pick up and throw that one, I think it sounds like so much fun to me. A really interesting way of handling tiny enemies, a really interesting way of actually handling flying enemies, possibly even better single target, maybe. I'm not sure. Probably would be quite good against the Caretaker if we actually get the proximity mine to go off against the Caretaker. Could be interesting against things like that. I think the idea of somehow twisting the proximity mine to something that's actually quite good against flying enemies is really funny, genuinely. I do actually regret sort of though, and this could be a part of this, if it were a new grenade, some kind of sticky, like proximity fly swatter grenade built from the ground up to be that, where it could actually stick to things before exploding, which would obviously be sticky grenade, which is why I think this actually works more as an overclock for the proximity mine than anything else. Which is why this idea is one of those ones where you have to sort of, or I have to sort of admit that it's really, really unlikely, because it probably wouldn't work too much as a new grenade in terms of fulfilling a niche, and which means that it really only works as a grenade overclock, which means, of course, that it's not too likely to ever exist. I just think it sounds like too much fun to not at least consider. I really like the idea of sort of juggling proximity mines, as in you could have multiple out at the same time, and just sort of throwing them around like really manically. In fact, there would also be the danger, of course, I think, of it exploding in your hand. I would really like that. The idea that it becomes active as soon as you pull it out, I think, is pretty funny. Also, that's a bit of a weird remark. Ignore that, please. Yeah, but that's Fly Swatter. I think if there's anything to take away from this entire ordeal, it's that probably that radiation deserves its own grenade. Radiation just deserves some more presence in the game in general, I think, is really the lesson I want. Not the lesson, but really the point I want to drive home. Also, more things that are specifically for tiny enemies as well. I think you'd be surprised. I think Ghost Ship themselves might be surprised at how many people find tiny enemies, how many people find swarmers, shockers, shredders, the SSS, to be one of their biggest issues. Certainly one of mine. I am a big advocate for Nadosite shocker genocide. So I would love to see anything like that. I think the idea of escalating damage is also extremely cool. Love to see it in more places. Proximity mine being one of them. So yeah, escalating damage, radiation, and things that specialize against tiny enemies. All three things that are seen across these different ideas that I would love to see either implemented in some kind of future where we get grenade overclocks, or just as other mechanics, or see those mechanics in other places in the game as well. Either way, that is the best I can do for now, I think. I hope this was brief and enjoyable, and comprehensive as well. I hope. I try my best. If you did enjoy, please make sure to like, subscribe. You can click the bell if you want to be notified about all anything Deep Rock, all Deep Rock news, especially. That's I want to drive that home. That's something that I'm dedicated to now. You'll never miss anything if you follow our channel in regards to Deep Rock. So please check us out if you're new. And as always, thanks for watching and take care.